Hailé Gerima from Ethiopia, teaching and making films when I can. It's very difficult, but that's my life. Initially, it was more, I was in a theater with my father when in Ethiopia, and I went to the United States to study theater, and by accident I found films. Over the years I've realized how much, especially for those of us who are from the, let's say, third world countries or Africa, I find it to be the most powerful tool to express our story. Well, for me, you know, I always felt half of my responsibility that I gave myself was to make films, to tell stories, but at the same time also create opportunities to inspire young people. I've always, for 40 years, been teaching in this Luxor Film Festival. The best part for me is this workshop that I do with young people from Uganda, from Burundi, Rwanda, from Morocco, from many African countries. Young people coming and wanting to be filmmakers fascinate me. So I always felt these young men and women are the future filmmakers. Well, it's more, I'm always interested in the African people all over, engaged in struggle. Nothing interests me outside that. It's always, whether I do a film in Africa or in America with the African-American issue, is the struggle that fascinates me, the story of struggling to be free. To me, I think that's the best example we leave to our young people, is the idea of struggling as something normal to change circumstances. And so that's what I would classify my films under. You know, Sankofa is, again, it's a resistance story against slavery, and not many films were interested or made by a mainstream industry to show African people in the diaspora, whether it's in Haiti or Guadeloupe or Martinique or Jamaica or Grenada or the United States. They did not just acclimate to slavery. And these are the immediate actors of slavery's resistance, are black people. The young people especially are destabilized when they see they have no legacy of resistance, struggle. So in Sankofa, the idea of rebellion is inherent against slavery, is inherent. It's not something given from outside by the heroic white character. So Sankofa was a turning point for me. The brutality of slavery is against people who resisted. And to subdue a people, to subdue the idea of freedom, white people are brutal because they want to subdue unsubduable people. And to me, that is the human story that I'm interested in. So I don't know, I haven't seen these films that come from Hollywood basically because I'm actually busy trying to do my own film. And if I make a film about slavery, the white people are not principal, period. The minute you give, let's say if you have 1 hour and a half, and let's say even if you give 40 minutes of 1 hour and a half to white people, you are destroying the black story, in my view, because you don't have enough time to develop the story of black people. So African filmmakers have stories. The problem is finance. Because one, the African countries, the governments are corrupt. They don't have cultural notion. There is no cultural program. Where does the African filmmaker? He goes to Europe to beg. And then the European says, no, this history is accusing me. I don't finance this. I finance this. So what happens is our cultural producers are economically destabilized the way Africa is destabilized. Now, for me, that's the biggest issue, is how do we harness finance, national policy in our culture? How do we make these corrupt governments not destroy our culture? I know they hate cinema, local cinema. They prefer Western Hollywood cinema because it doesn't accuse them. But the mirror of African cinema is projecting the corruption of our leaders. The early 1960 African cinema is accusing false independence. How many now, the new leaders, the Uganda guy, the Rwanda guy, the Ethiopian guy, who would allow, the South African, who would allow introspective cinema on our own liberation, independence, and political process? So it's a dilemma that you are born You're a storyteller, but you have no access to the tools of storytelling. That's very, very tragic. Most go crazy. Okay, many African filmmakers cannot stay normal over the years. You know, my wife is a filmmaker. We both struggle together. I have 6 kids who always keep me normal. Every time this African cinema problem is trying to drive me crazy. In other circumstances, some are lonely. Some are, their families break down. They feel alone. They might be in Europe by themselves, facing the snow, facing the weather they were never born into. It's a madness. Yes. To be an African filmmaker. Now, the young people are desperate, and they think it's normal. They think to be alone in Cannes is normal. They think it's normal to be in Berlin and be exotic, normal. When we were coming, it's not normal to be the only one African. It's not normal. We know it. All over Africa, but based in Ethiopia. Taking my private jet plane to Uganda to make a film on Museveni, on this absolute dictator. You know, I say, hey, if I was free, that's what I will do, is base myself in Ethiopia and travel to any part of Africa I want to go to tell a story and share my way of seeing the world to the African continent and to the world. I will always, I'm writing. Last night I was working. I don't give up. I'm writing as if I'm going to make 100 movies. I tell my students, I can say I never had money to make movies, but I can't say I never had a pencil to write a script.